The Arizona sun scorched the cracked pavement of the park, its heat relentless as it shimmered in the dry air. Lucas, his rugged face shadowed by a faded brown cowboy hat, walked slowly along the trail, his boots stirring up small puffs of dust with each step. The park was deserted at this hour, the late afternoon heat forcing most people indoors. Lucas preferred it this way. The solitude was a balm for the unending turmoil in his mind. Afghanistan. The name itself was a scar etched into his memory. The faces of fallen brothers, the thunderous roar of explosions, and the constant edge of fear haunted his days and seeped into his nights. He had returned home intact in body, but the war had left marks on his soul that refused to fade. As he rounded a bend in the trail, something caught his eye beneath a sprawling mesquite tree. At first, it looked like a heap of discarded rags, but then he saw movement, a weak twitch of a paw. It was a dog. A German shepherd, majestic even in its battered state, lay on its side, its coat matted with dirt and dried blood. Lucas's chest tightened, and his instincts sharpened. Something was wrong. Approaching cautiously, Lucas's hand hovered near the concealed handgun he still carried, a habit he hadn't shaken since returning home. "Easy there, buddy," he murmured, his voice rough from weeks of disuse. The dog's ears flicked, and it let out a soft, pitiful whimper. Its eyes, pools of soulful amber, were clouded with pain and fear. Lucas knelt beside it, his experienced eye taking in the injuries. A deep, angry gash ran along the dog's side, and its front leg lay at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. "Looks like you've been through hell," Lucas muttered, his tone softer now as he slowly extended his hand. The dog flinched but didn't snarl or snap. Taking this as a sign of trust, Lucas began to examine the wounds with the care and precision honed in combat. His hands, calloused from years of war, moved gently over the injured dog, his touch surprisingly tender. "We've got to get you out of this heat," he said quietly. Carefully, Lucas scooped the dog into his arms. It was heavier than he expected, its body still taut despite its weakness. The shepherd whimpered but didn't struggle. Lucas carried it to his battered pickup truck and laid it gently in the back. "You're safe now," he murmured as he climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. Dust kicked up behind him as he sped toward his home, a modest ranch house on the outskirts of Flagstaff. It was a quiet place, surrounded by desert scrub, where Lucas had hoped to find peace after the war. He hadn't, not yet, but maybe, just maybe, this dog could help. Once home, Lucas wasted no time. He set up a makeshift infirmary in his spare room, spreading out old blankets on the floor and fetching the first aid kit he kept under the sink. His hands moved with practiced efficiency as he cleaned and dressed the dog's wounds. He'd tended to countless injuries in Afghanistan, some human, some canine, but this felt different. This wasn't about orders or duty. This was compassion, a lifeline extended to a creature in desperate need. The dog whimpered occasionally but didn't resist, its eyes following Lucas's every move. Those eyes, so deep, so trusting, touched Lucas in a way he hadn't felt in years. "You're a tough one," he said, stroking the dog's head with a rare softness. "What's your name, buddy?" He glanced at its neck and found no collar. "Guess I'll have to give you one." Rummaging through an old box, Lucas found a worn leather collar and fastened it around the dog's neck. He paused, staring at the injured animal. "Rex," he said finally. "Yeah, that fits. You're a survivor." Rex's tail thumped weakly against the floor as Lucas sat beside him, his heart unexpectedly lighter. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something better. Its eyes were closed now, breathing shallow but steady, and Lucas felt a flicker of hope, a warmth spreading through his chest that he hadn't felt in years. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something good. The next morning, Lucas woke to the sound of soft whimpering. He rushed to the spare room and found Rex, groggy from the pain medication, trying to stand on his injured leg. The leg trembled, and Rex collapsed back onto the blanket with a soft thud. "Whoa there, easy does it," Lucas said, kneeling beside him. Gently, he guided Rex back into a comfortable position, his hands instinctively checking the bandages. The bleeding had stopped, but the wounds were still raw, red reminders of whatever violence Rex had endured. "You're going to be all right, boy," Lucas reassured, his voice rough yet soothing. He fetched a bowl of water and held it to Rex's lips. The dog lapped gratefully, his tail giving the faintest wag. Lucas smiled at the small sign of life. As he sat beside Rex, his thoughts wandered back to the park. How had this dog ended up in such a state? Why had no one come looking for him? The questions gnawed at Lucas, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. He decided to head back to the park, hoping to find some answers. By mid-morning, the park was alive with activity. Children squealed with delight on the swings, families spread out picnic blankets under shady trees, and joggers made their way along the winding paths. Lucas scanned the area, his sharp eyes searching for anything, or anyone, that might provide a clue. His gaze landed on a woman sitting on a bench near the mesquite tree where he'd found Rex. She was middle-aged, with weathered features and a worn backpack at her feet. Something about her seemed familiar. He approached her cautiously. "Excuse me, ma'am," Lucas began, tipping his hat slightly. "I was wondering if you might have seen anything unusual around here yesterday. I found a dog, a German shepherd, badly injured." The woman's eyes widened in recognition. "You found Rex?" she exclaimed, relief flooding her voice. "Thank goodness. I was so worried about him." Lucas's heart leaped. "You know him?" "Know him?" The woman chuckled softly, her expression tender. "He's my guardian angel, that one. Name's Mary, by the way." Lucas introduced himself, and Mary proceeded to recount the events of the previous day. She explained how she had been sleeping under the mesquite tree when a group of young men approached her. Their faces were masked, and their intentions were unmistakably malicious. Rex, who had been scavenging nearby, had sensed the danger. Without hesitation, he had leapt to her defense, barking ferociously and attacking the men. He fought them off bravely but suffered for his courage. The thugs had kicked and beaten him before fleeing, leaving Rex bloodied and broken. As Mary spoke, Lucas's fists clenched, his anger simmering with each word. He pictured the cowards attacking the defenseless dog, and a fierce protectiveness surged through him. Rex wasn't just brave, he was extraordinary. Lucas knelt beside Mary, his voice tight with restrained fury. "Do you know who they were?" Mary shook her head, her face etched with regret. "No, they were wearing masks. But I heard them talking, something about an initiation. Some gang, I reckon." Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. He'd heard about gangs in the area, violent, ruthless, and growing bolder by the day. Their chaos was spilling into neighborhoods, turning places like this park into danger zones. He knew he had to tread carefully. "Thank you, Mary," Lucas said, his voice filled with quiet gratitude. "You've given me a lot to think about." Mary nodded, her eyes soft with concern. "Take care of him, Lucas. He's a special one." Lucas left the park with a newfound determination. He had a mission now, a purpose that extended beyond his own struggles. He would find the people who had hurt Rex and hold them accountable. But first, he had to focus on what mattered most, taking care of the courageous dog who had already changed his life. The days that followed were a blur of activity. Lucas, driven by a deep sense of responsibility, threw himself into Rex's care. He cleaned and dressed the wounds with meticulous precision, ensuring Rex received the best attention he could provide. With each passing day, the bond between man and dog grew stronger, an unspoken trust building between them. For the first time in years, Lucas felt something unfamiliar: hope. Rex received the best veterinary care Lucas could provide. The vet confirmed a fractured front leg, requiring a cast and weeks of strict rest. Despite the discomfort, Rex proved to be a model patient. He endured the pain with stoic resilience, his soulful brown eyes radiating a quiet gratitude that warmed Lucas's heart. With each passing day, the bond between them deepened, a silent understanding forged through shared vulnerability. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the New Mexico plains, Lucas's internal battles raged on. Night brought a resurgence of demons he had spent years trying to bury. The faces of fallen comrades, the screams of the wounded, and the relentless chaos of war haunted him in vivid, terrifying detail. Sleep offered no escape, nightmares left him drenched in sweat, his heart pounding as if he were still on the battlefield. He would wake up gasping for air, the echoes of explosions ringing in his ears. Lucas had tried everything: therapy, medication, even drowning his sorrows in whiskey, but nothing seemed to ease the relentless torment. One particularly harrowing night, he woke up trembling, his body soaked with sweat and his mind spiraling. Desperate for a distraction, he stumbled out of bed and found himself drawn to the spare room, where Rex lay peacefully sleeping. He sat down beside the dog, his hand instinctively resting on Rex's bandaged leg. The warmth of the dog's fur and the steady rhythm of his breathing had an immediate calming effect. Closing his eyes, Lucas focused on the sensation of Rex's fur beneath his fingers and the gentle rise and fall of his chest. For the first time in years, a sense of peace washed over him. The nightmares receded, replaced by a tranquility he hadn't thought possible. Opening his eyes, Lucas found Rex awake, watching him with those deep, understanding eyes. Rex's tail thumped softly against the floor. "You're a good boy, Rex," Lucas whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Leaning down, he rested his forehead against the dog's, feeling a connection that transcended words, a bond rooted in trust, loyalty, and shared pain. From that night on, Lucas's nightmares began to lessen. Rex became his anchor, a constant presence that shielded him from the darkness threatening to consume him. Often, Lucas would wake to find Rex lying beside his bed, his watchful eyes filled with concern. The dog's presence was a soothing balm, a reminder that Lucas wasn't alone. As the days turned into weeks, Lucas began to notice changes in himself. He was less irritable, less prone to the outbursts that had once been a regular part of his life. With Rex's companionship, he started venturing out more, taking short walks in the park where they had first met. The simple pleasures of life, fresh air, sunlight, the sound of children laughing, became antidotes to the grim memories that had haunted him for so long. Rex wasn't just healing his physical wounds, he was mending Lucas's fractured spirit. For the first time in years, Lucas felt a flicker of hope, a sense that life could be more than just enduring each day. The park became their sanctuary, a place where Lucas could shed the weight of his past and embrace the present. He began chatting with other dog owners, sharing stories about their furry companions and finding common ground in their shared love for animals. Conversations that once felt impossible now came naturally, and the laughter of children playing became a welcome reprieve from the silence of his home. With Rex by his side, Lucas was beginning to feel alive again. The loyal dog who had stumbled into his life was not just a companion, he was a savior, a beacon of light guiding Lucas out of the darkness and into a life filled with new possibilities. One sunny afternoon, as Lucas and Rex enjoyed their usual stroll through the park, Lucas spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench. It was Mary. Her weathered face carried a mix of weariness and resilience, and beside her was a battered suitcase, her worldly possessions neatly packed. "Mary!" Lucas called out, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Rex, recognizing his friend, bounded toward her, his tail wagging furiously. Mary's face lit up at the sight of them. "Lucas! Rex! It's good to see you both," she exclaimed, her voice warm despite the exhaustion etched in her features. They sat together on the bench, catching up on each other's lives. Mary spoke openly about the challenges of living on the streets, the constant struggle for survival, the gnawing loneliness that was harder to bear than any physical discomfort. Lucas listened intently, his heart aching for her plight. He couldn't shake the thought of Mary spending another night out there, vulnerable and alone. "Mary," he began, his voice filled with sincerity, "why don't you come stay with me for a while? I've got plenty of room, and Rex would love the company." Mary's eyes widened in surprise. "Oh, Lucas, I couldn't possibly impose." "Nonsense," Lucas interrupted firmly. "It would be my pleasure. Besides," he added with a playful wink, "Rex seems to have adopted you as his second human." Mary hesitated, her eyes flickering with both gratitude and doubt. After a moment, a small but genuine smile spread across her face. "Well, if you're sure." "I'm sure," Lucas said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Come on, let's go home." And just like that, Mary became part of Lucas's life. She moved into the spare room, transforming it from a makeshift infirmary into a cozy haven. Her presence breathed new life into the house. She took on chores, cooked hearty meals, and filled the once silent rooms with laughter and warmth. Lucas, in turn, found himself drawn to Mary's resilience and unwavering optimism. She had faced hardships he couldn't even imagine, yet she carried herself with a strength and kindness that inspired him. Mary taught him to appreciate the simple pleasures in life, the warmth of a home-cooked meal, the joy of a shared laugh, the comfort of companionship in a world that could often feel cruel and unforgiving. Together, they formed an unlikely family. Lucas, a veteran scarred by war, Mary, a woman weathered by life's trials, and Rex, the dog who had brought them together. Their shared love for Rex and mutual need for healing created a bond that grew stronger with each passing day. Life at Lucas's ranch settled into a stable rhythm. The days were filled with purpose and companionship. Mary, with her infectious optimism and practical skills, became an invaluable part of the household. She transformed Lucas's bachelor kitchen into a haven of culinary delights. Her meals, simple yet hearty, were filled with the flavors of home and seasoned with love. Rex, meanwhile, thrived under their care. His leg healed steadily, and he was no longer the timid, injured stray Lucas had found in the park. Instead, he was a vibrant, energetic dog whose playful spirit brought joy to their days. He followed Lucas around the ranch, helping with chores, his tail wagging incessantly. In the evenings, he curled up at Mary's feet while she cooked, resting his head on her lap with adoration in his soulful eyes. For the first time in years, Lucas felt a sense of belonging and peace. The nightmares that had once plagued him were replaced by dreams of laughter and companionship. He was finally beginning to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. Mary and Rex had become more than housemates. They were family. Together, they found solace and strength in one another, forging a bond that transformed their lives in ways none of them could have foreseen. But the past, like a persistent shadow, had a way of catching up. One evening, as Lucas was returning from a supply run in town, a sense of unease settled over him. His sharp eyes caught sight of a group of young men loitering near the edge of his property, their faces partially obscured by hoodies and their postures menacing. Their eyes glinted in the dim light, and Lucas immediately recognized them, the thugs from the park. His heart pounded, a mixture of fear and anger coursing through his veins. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles widening as his mind raced. He knew he had to protect Mary and Rex at all costs. Pulling into the driveway, Lucas scanned the surroundings, watching as the men scattered into the shadows like predators retreating before striking again. Lucas jumped out of the truck, his hand instinctively reaching for the .45 tucked into his waistband. He bolted into the house, his voice sharp with urgency. "Mary! Rex! Get in the back room now." Startled by his tone, Mary quickly ushered Rex into the spare room, locking the door behind them. Meanwhile, Lucas moved swiftly, his military training kicking in. He opened the gun cabinet and grabbed his rifle, checking it with practiced precision. He positioned himself by the living room window, scanning the darkness outside. The silence didn't last long. A sudden crash shattered the stillness, a rock hurled through the living room window, the glass exploding into jagged shards. Lucas's grip on the rifle tightened. He wasn't going to let them harm his family. A tense standoff ensued. Lucas, his senses heightened and instincts honed from years of combat, waited for the right moment. He knew he couldn't stay holed up in the house forever. The fight would come to him whether he wanted it or not. With a surge of adrenaline, he flung open the front door and charged out, rifle raised. The thugs, caught off guard by his boldness, scattered in panic. Lucas pursued them into the field surrounding the ranch, the moon casting an eerie glow over the landscape. His military training took over. Moving with stealth and precision, he cornered one of the thugs near a cluster of trees. In one swift motion, he disarmed the young man and pinned him against the bark. "Who sent you?" Lucas demanded, his voice low and menacing. The thug, his face pale with fear, stammered, I can't say." Lucas pressed the rifle closer to the thug's chest. "Tell me, or you'll regret it." The young man's resolve crumbled. "It was Scar," he blurted. "He said we had to finish what we started." The name sent a chill down Lucas's spine. He knew it well. Scar was the ruthless leader of a local gang, notorious for their brutality. But why would Scar target him and Rex? Lucas didn't have time to dwell on the answer. He shoved the thug aside and raced back toward the house, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. When he arrived, he found Mary and Rex huddled in the spare room, their faces pale with worry. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "We're fine," Mary replied, her voice trembling slightly. "What happened?" Lucas recounted the events, his tone grim. "It's not over yet," he said. "Scar is behind this. We need to be prepared." A heavy sense of dread hung in the air. They weren't dealing with random violence anymore. This was something far more dangerous, a targeted attack by someone with resources and deadly intent. The night stretched long and tense. Lucas, rifle in hand, kept watch by the window, his senses alert for any sign of movement. Mary sat beside him, unable to sleep, her hand resting on Rex's head. The dog's calm presence brought them a shred of comfort in the uncertainty. As dawn broke, casting pale light over the Texas landscape, Lucas made a decision. He turned to Mary, his voice firm. "I can't wait for them to make the next move. I'm going into town. I need to find out why Scar is after us." Mary's eyes filled with concern. "Lucas, please be careful. These people are dangerous." "I know," he said, his gaze steady. "But I can't let them terrorize us. I'll be back as soon as I can." With that, he kissed Mary's forehead, gave Rex a reassuring pat, and walked out the door, determined to confront the storm head-on. Lucas couldn't let Scar dictate their lives. He had to confront the threat head-on. "Mary," he said, his voice firm, "I'm going into town. I need to find out why Scar is after us." Mary's eyes widened with concern. "Lucas, be careful. Those gang members are dangerous." "I know," Lucas said, his gaze unwavering. "But I can't let them terrorize us. I'll be back as soon as I can." He kissed Mary on the forehead, ruffled Rex's fur, and stepped out the door. The drive into town was tense. Lucas's mind raced as he tried to piece together the puzzle. Why would Scar, a notorious gang leader, be interested in a veteran, a homeless woman, and a dog? The answer, he suspected, lay in the incident at the park. He parked his truck near a diner he knew was frequented by Scar's associates. Entering cautiously, his sharp eyes scanned the room. He spotted a young man nursing a cup of coffee at the counter, his face marked by a crudely drawn scar, a telltale sign of affiliation. Lucas approached him, his demeanor calm but commanding. "We need to talk," he said. The young man recognized Lucas instantly and flinched. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. Lucas leaned in closer, his voice low and menacing. "Don't play dumb with me. I know you were at the park that night. I know about Scar." The young man's eyes darted nervously around the room, his fear evident. "Look, I didn't want to do it," he pleaded. "Scar made us." He said it was an initiation. "An initiation for what?" Lucas pressed, his voice sharp. He said the dog interfered with his business. He wanted to make an example of it." A surge of anger rushed through Lucas. Scar had targeted Rex simply because the dog had defended Mary. The senseless cruelty of it all fueled Lucas's resolve. "And what about me?" Lucas asked, his voice tightening. "Why is Scar after me?" The young man hesitated, his fear holding him back, but Lucas's unyielding glare forced the truth out. He said you were a problem. He said you were asking too many questions." Lucas's suspicions were confirmed. Scar was trying to silence him, to eliminate any interference with his criminal operations. Lucas thanked the young man for the information and left the diner, his mind reeling. He now had a clearer picture of what they were up against, but he knew the danger was far from over. When Lucas returned to the ranch, his heart was heavy. He told Mary everything, the encounter at the diner, Scar's motives, and the mounting threat. Mary listened intently, her face pale but resolute. "We can't let him win," she said firmly. "We have to fight back." Lucas nodded, her determination strengthening his own. They were in this together. A makeshift family bound by loyalty and love, they would face Scar and his gang, protecting one another no matter the cost. The confrontation was inevitable. Lucas knew it was only a matter of time before Scar made his move. He spent the following days preparing for the worst, securing the house, gathering supplies, and ensuring Mary and Rex were safe. The tension was palpable. Every shadow seemed a potential threat, every creak of the house a harbinger of danger. Yet, amidst the fear, there was unity, a shared determination to face the darkness together. 2 nights later, under the cloak of a new moon, the inevitable happened. The ranch house was surrounded. Lucas, alerted by Rex's low growl, peered out the window. Shadows moved in the darkness, their outlines illuminated by the faint moonlight. He counted at least half a dozen figures, armed and menacing. "They're here," Lucas whispered to Mary, his voice grim. "Stay put and keep Rex quiet." Mary nodded, her face set with resolve, and led Rex to the spare room, locking the door behind them. Lucas grabbed his rifle and positioned himself by the front door. His heart pounded, but his mind was focused. This was no longer just a battle for survival, it was a battle for his family, for his home, and for the life they were trying to rebuild. The silence was broken by the sound of shattering glass. A rock smashed through the living room window, scattering shards across the floor. Lucas gripped his rifle tightly, his senses heightened. He wasn't going to let Scar's men take what mattered most. Not without a fight. Lucas knew he was outnumbered, but he wouldn't go down without a fight. He owed that much to Mary, to Rex, and to himself. A rock shattered the tense silence, crashing through the living room window. Shouts and curses followed, the gang members emboldened by their numbers. Lucas took a deep breath, steadied his aim, and fired a warning shot. The sound echoed through the night, momentarily silencing the attackers. "This is private property," Lucas yelled, his voice cutting through the stillness. "Get off my land before I call the cops." A mocking laugh was the only response. Another rock flew through the window, followed by a barrage of crude insults. Lucas clenched his jaw. These weren't petty thugs, they were Scar's enforcers, fueled by blind loyalty and a thirst for violence. He fired another shot, this time aiming closer to the figures lurking in the shadows. A yelp of pain confirmed his aim. The attackers hesitated, their bravado momentarily shaken. Lucas seized the opportunity, firing off another round, forcing them to take cover. He knew he couldn't hold them off forever. He needed a plan, a way to turn the tide in their favor. His eyes darted around the room, searching for inspiration. He spotted the fireplace, its embers still glowing from the previous night's fire. An idea sparked in his mind. "Mary," he yelled, his voice firm. "Throw some logs on the fire, make it as big as you can." Mary, understanding his intent, sprang into action. She piled logs onto the fire, fanning the flames until they roared with renewed intensity. The room was bathed in an orange glow, the shadows dancing ominously on the walls. Lucas grabbed a kerosene lamp from the mantelpiece and hurled it toward the window. The lamp shattered on impact, the kerosene igniting in a fiery explosion. Flames quickly spread, engulfing the curtains and licking at the wooden frame. Startled by the sudden blaze, the attackers retreated from the house, their shouts turning to panicked cries. Lucas, using the distraction to his advantage, slipped out the back door, his rifle at the ready. He circled around the house, taking up a position behind a large oak tree. From his vantage point, he could see the attackers regrouping, their faces illuminated by the firelight. Scar, distinguishable by the distinctive scar running across his face, barked orders, his voice filled with rage. Lucas took aim, his finger tightening on the trigger. He wasn't a killer, but he wouldn't hesitate to defend his home and his family. He fired a shot, the bullet whizzing past Scar's ear. The gang leader ducked, his eyes wide with surprise. Another shot rang out, this time from the direction of the house. Mary, armed with Lucas's old hunting rifle, had joined the fight. Her shot found its mark, striking one of the attackers in the leg. He crumpled to the ground, his screams adding to the chaos. The attackers, caught between two fires, the house's flames and the gunfire, began to falter. Their leader injured and their morale shattered, they finally broke ranks and fled into the night. Lucas and Mary emerged cautiously from their hiding places, their hearts pounding and their bodies trembling with adrenaline. They surveyed the scene, the fire still raging but beginning to dwindle, the shadows of the attackers receding into the distance. Rex, sensing the danger had passed, bounded out of the house, barking excitedly. He ran to Lucas and Mary, licking their faces with unbridled joy, his tail wagging furiously. They embraced him, the warmth of their hug a stark contrast to the violence that had just transpired. They had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious. The scars of the battle, both physical and emotional, would linger, but their bond, forged in fire and tested by adversity, was stronger than ever. Lucas looked at Mary and Rex, a deep sense of gratitude washing over him. Together, they had proven that no matter how dire the circumstances, love and loyalty could prevail. The story of Lucas, Mary, and Rex teaches us invaluable lessons about resilience, loyalty, and the strength found in unity. In life, challenges often arise unexpectedly, like the threats faced by this unlikely trio. Yet, their unwavering determination to protect each other underscores the power of standing together against adversity. Lucas's courage reminds us that confronting our fears and past traumas can lead to growth, while Mary's optimism and Rex's unwavering loyalty highlight the importance of compassion and connection. The story also emphasizes the value of community. Reaching out, offering help, and finding support in others can transform seemingly insurmountable situations. In our fast-paced, often isolating world, the bond they shared reminds us to cherish relationships, remain steadfast in our values, and never underestimate the impact of kindness. By leaning on one another, we can find strength, rebuild, and overcome even life's most daunting trials. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next story.